This is Anything But Footy. I'm Michael. About now, I should be making my final preparations for leaving for Tokyo. The flights were booked, the accommodation sorted. And at the start of lockdown, I was beginning to prepare my notes, look at the logistics, and put together a plan for a month spent in Japan, reporting on the Olympic Games for TalkSport and TalkSport 2. I won't lie, I was really looking forward to it. I'd never been to Japan before, and always got a great deal of satisfaction when on the road, covering big events like the Olympics, Commonwealth Games or World Athletics Championships. But as the situation has unfolded since the turn of the year, I began to have nagging doubts that the Games wouldn't be able to proceed as planned. Reporting this story, I got it wrong initially. On one of my many broadcasts for national radio, I said the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, wouldn't give up their event lightly and would look to proceed as planned. I said Japan had time on its side. I said Japan was developed and an island, so could control entry points and develop testing centres easily. I said it would be too expensive and problematic to unravel the existing logistics. I said history suggested the Games would go ahead. Only world wars had caused their cancellation previously. The massacre of Israeli athletes in Munich in 1972 brought just a brief hiatus to the action. A bomb in Atlanta in 1996 at Centennial Park didn't stop Steve Redgrave, Matthew Pinson and others being told to carry on as normal. The British pair won gold later that morning. And in 2018, against a backdrop of increasing tension on the Korean Peninsula and a potential threat of a nuclear strike, the Winter Games in Pyeongchang started and finished on schedule. Then the reality check. My reality check. The daily briefings brought an increasingly gloomy outlook. Spain and Italy had been ravaged by this deadly disease. The NHS was on a footing like no other in its existence. How would covid-19 affect communities in cities like Delhi or Rio, with a dense population and a health system not set up like the one we enjoy in the United Kingdom? It became clear to me there was no way the Olympic and the Paralympic Games were going to happen anytime soon. The Paralympic Games, which I was hoping to cover for TalkSport and TalkSport 2 from the studio base, was an interesting point in question. After all, many of the potential athletes had underlying health conditions, and it was simply not worth taking the necessary risks to carry on competing and training. Aside from there being no time to qualify fairly and properly for the Games, which made Tokyo 2020 a non-starter, for me it simply made sense to cancel or postpone on a human level. People were dying, people were seriously ill, people were self-isolating away from their friends and families, with who knows what consequences for their well-being down the line. Suddenly, worrying about choosing your nation's 3 quickest athletes over 1,500 metres seemed irrelevant. I was late to this decision. Not quite as late as the IOC, but late nonetheless. Eventually, the powers that be came to the same conclusion as I, and the Games were postponed to 2021. Of course, I'll miss covering the Olympics and Paralympics this year. I'll miss the camaraderie you build up with your fellow journalists and broadcasters, and I'll miss the privilege of being in the same building as the world's greatest sportsmen and women. But it will make the same job in 2021 even sweeter, and ensure that even on the latest of nights or earliest of mornings, when stood in torrential rain or extreme heat, waiting for someone to finish a doping test before coming to speak to you to record an interview, I will never take that for granted. I will also be more careful of my language. A missed last dive or false start will no longer be a tragedy or a disaster in the lexicon of Olympic sports reporting. It will instead be an error, a mistake, poor judgment, or unfortunate. So I've confessed. I will miss the Olympics and the Paralympics, and I've missed or will miss a few big events that I would normally be broadcasting from. The Tour de Yorkshire, World Series Triathlon, Diving's World Series Finale, British Championships in swimming and athletics, and of course the anniversary games. But having said all that, I've not massively missed sport. It's become, maybe irrelevant is too harsh a word to use, but maybe unimportant to me right now. I have enjoyed watching reruns of classic sporting action over the past few months. I've enjoyed Super Saturday, again, Italia 90 and Euro 96. But I haven't missed that tribalism that I witness week in, week out on the terraces, though. A football crowd can be a great place to be. I remember being stood behind the goal at Old Trafford when David Beckham converted the free kick against Greece that sent England to the World Cup finals in Japan and Korea. And I remember hugging strangers and exchanging looks of joy with my new best friends. At Euro 96 at Wembley, I witnessed England beat Spain on penalties. I watched a couple, dressed as jesters, swaying without a care in the world to Badil, Skinner and the Lightning Seeds for an age after the final whistle. But I've also seen faces contorted with anger because another adult has steered a spherical object the wrong side of a white metal post. Grown-ups swaying with rage because the tallest person on the team, the one wearing the gloves, somehow contriving to drop something at the feet of another person in a different jersey. And I've heard children unleashing a volley of abuse at sportsmen and women. And where did they learn those words? Probably from their parents or guardians. This isn't an attack on football either. It's not unique to the beautiful game. At the last Olympics, we saw booing of athletes in Rio. Not just panto stuff either, but a real concerted effort to distract and unsettle. A year ago, Bianca Walkden was booed on her way to World Taekwondo Championship gold. We've all got our team or our favourite. I just don't think I love them that much that it makes me want to behave in such a way to their opponent. Maybe, just maybe, I'm not a real fan or a true supporter. I prefer to think of sport as a positive thing. During lockdown, we've had Mental Health Awareness Week. I was involved with my audio production company business partner John in producing a special edition of the UK Sport podcast called Medals and More. It was fronted by London Olympic champion, now chair of UK Sport, Dame Catherine Granger, and featured some searingly honest interviews with Lizzie Arnold, Britain's most successful winter Olympian ever, and Tom Bosworth, a world record-holding race walker. Lizzie talked about crying herself to sleep every night for a year, such was the pressure of preparing for an Olympics. And Tom revealed how he had tried to commit suicide following his disqualification at the World Athletics Championships in London in 2017. Now they are using their profile and their platform to speak out and have the difficult conversations, which hopefully will help others. I've been lucky to have been able to carry on working throughout the pandemic, turning my media production experience over to my local NHS trust and producing a series of videos for them for their staff, including important messages for training, guidance and help. To meet doctors, nurses, midwives and support staff and hear how they've been scared by what they've seen has rather put things into perspective for me. I hope sports fans have maybe realised their own sense of perspective over these past few weeks, because whether you're England, Scotland, Argentina or Germany, whether you're City, United, Town, Albion or Athletic, we've all been affected in just the same way. And download our weekly Anything But Footy podcast for all the latest Olympic and Paralympic news, interviews and conversations. We're on Apple and Google Podcasts. Just search Anything But Footy.